there, say again?
Climate action.
Oh, climate action team. Well, all three. I would suggest that we've all had a chance to read, so that as opposed to having the committees read their entire report, I would focus more on questions and comments, first from the board and then from the committees, if that makes sense. All right, so let's take them in order as they were in the packet. So, solid waste report, that's a regular town report. And then the next one's coastal waters. Nobody here from coastal waters. Any comments or questions from the board on the coastal waters report?
Well, they did give us, well, I guess we have a $95,000 recommended funding for this upcoming fiscal year. A big chunk being the Chandler's Piling replacement. I believe we're eligible for a SHIP grant, and we need to kind of get our act together on that. I don't know who's taking, is Coastal Waters doing that, or is it just the town? I mean,
Krista, could you make on, so we'll have a list of things for Vika to consider. Could you add an item to that list? Who will lead seeking for the SHIP grant for our part of the pilings replacement at Chandler's? And also add to the budgeting conversation the budget items in the coastal waters report, but also the budget items in the planning board report. And I think that's the two that jumped out at me when I read. So thank you. Back to the Coastal Waters Committee report. Any other comments?
well, if they were here, the only thing is the removal of the floats was not maybe optimal in the way it evolved. And I was just wondering, they didn't say much about that in this report. I think maybe the report was done before that happened. So this was November, the floats came out just recently.
Yeah, there was some mention in coastal waters, I thought, about suggesting, wasn't there something in there about a suggestion that we pursue RFQ, RFP again for the next round based on what we learned this year?
Yeah, but that was written in November. So
that was not written after this go round.
Correct. Okay. So what I'm saying is it might be good to get it, for Vika, to get an update from them and kind of come to the board with what the game plan would be for next year.
Yeah, what we learned.
And my personally, I would not want it to happen in whatever it was, January.
January, yes. Yes, it got delayed, and I think everybody knows that delay wasn't good. There was also a note in there that the two punt floats to the east of the landing for the CTC boat were damaged to such a degree that they need to be replaced. And I would assume that's related to how late they came out combined with the severity of the winter we're having. Eliza?
Were those the ones we were anticipating replacement anyway?
No. I think they were included in the normal rotation. I don't think they're the same size as the ones for which we've received the grants. Aren't they smaller, Carol, do you know?
Don't know. Herb knows the answer to all that. I don't know.
Okay. All right, so follow up on that and future agenda item. And the next committee, any other questions about coastal waters? Comments? So the next one was...
Well, so maybe the public would have...
Oh, sorry, yes. Any, having read the packet, Paul? Yeah.
Under aquaculture leases, they make a recommendation to the town to step in, act upon.
No.
There's not one item on their report.
I don't think it has. I think that's old news. Yes, I think we have reacted to that one. And I think that one's already gone by the wayside, if I'm not mistaken. Do you know?
I don't know the current stats.
Yeah. Wasn't that several months ago that one came to us? Yeah.
June.
Yeah. Oh, in June, yeah. Right. Okay. Other questions, comments from the public on coastal waters? Okay. Moving on from the planning board. Very detailed report, status, update for what's happened over the year. And also, lots of action items for the planning board. I'm sorry, for the select board. Any comments from the select board, questions for the planning board on this report?
Oh,
Yes.
I only have many more questions, which I've already spoke with Aaron about. Some of them having to do with, we have an application in with the Island Institute for a fellow, and this is one of their priorities. I had a quick conversation with the person at the Island Institute in charge of that, and had questions about what would the fellow be doing with this, with the planning board and the comprehensive plan. Some of those I need to address with you, and we've agreed to do that in the morning, but it's, this is clearly a big chunk of work our community needs to do.
Yeah.
In addition to so many others, but I really want to say thank you for a lot of enlightening information on tasks to do, and I'm looking forward to digging in.
When you two meet, if it would be possible to try to put numbers on some of the budgetary items that were suggested in the report, legal and consulting fees, comprehensive plan development work, perhaps being supported by some outside resources. If we could get some numbers on that and then bring that back through VICA to the budgeting process, that would be excellent to get some suggested numbers in there for that.
It brings up, it has a lot of scope for what we'll want our Island Fellow to do.
Very much so, yeah. Another item that I noted in there, the iWorks thing, Aaron, you mentioned. So I was involved in some of the early conversations with that organization for that software, and I think we're looking at two things here. I think one, our code officer, who's doing a great job in a lot of ways, will tell you, he'll be the first to tell you he's a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to technology. And I think it would behoove us to have him and the appropriate people, perhaps from the planning board, perhaps from the administration of the town, sit down with iWorks and talk about what specifically it is that we need, not just for the planning board and the Board of Appeals, but also for the citizenry to be able to access that data on a regular basis.
So,
Go ahead.
I'll
Yeah.
get to talk, just, probably better.
Yeah, rather than,
So, happy, as I said to Vika when I met with her, happy to, jump in and work with folks to get that to happen as quickly as possible. Every time, every week it passes, it's information we don't have, and we're trying to come up with our plan for the year as we look at the town meeting coming up and take care of any issues that we see that are important. And obviously, the Board of Appeals and Adjustment noted that there's some things that could be cleaned up, but we don't have visibility into a lot of those issues because we can't see provision, application, and so you say when, I'll be there, and if that's going to take some time, happy to come up with an interim solution, because we just want the information. It's got to be there. And we can take steps to physically be there to look at stuff.
yeah, both good points, and it is native within the iWorks software to be able to offer that sort of transparent access into the entire process. Getting it set up will be apparently our challenge, but we should be able to push on them to get that setup assistance, hopefully at no cost. If not at no cost, hopefully at minimal cost. So, thank you, Carol.
So are we requiring our applications to be digital format only?
We are requesting. If you don't have access, what it means is if they send it in a paper form, you can call them and put all the information in itself versus you doing it online, which is actually not terribly difficult.
So what are you seeing? Are people doing it online mostly?
Yeah, absolutely. Majority are, there's a.
So that generates then like a digital file, right? And, some towns just post those applications like just with a link on the
Yeah.
website.
In iWorks, it actually generates a workflow, and the workflow is designed to allow public access, public visibility, whether it's planning board or John Q. Citizen at any point in time, and you can control what those access points are. The user can control that. So we just need to get that set up properly so that the workflow is as visible as it should be.
Yeah. Okay. Seems solvable.
Yeah.
It's been taking a while.
Yes.
So I'm, like I said, happy to jump in and make that happen as quick as possible. Because, we'd like it for the next meeting in terms of our workflow for things we have to plan in March.
So maybe I missed something, sorry. So what's the obstacle to making it?
I don't know,
Oh.
because it's there's a software package that the town got, and the export of data, whether it's the export of all the files in connection with an application,
Yeah.
result,
Right, all this stuff.
whatever, it's got some kind of obstacle in there, and so that's the question, how to resolve that without, simply going in, which is an alternative to sitting there and opening the, sitting in iWorks, I'm assuming you can see everything.
Yeah, I don't have access to it myself.
Right, so it's
In the sales demonstration, it looked very easy to access all of that information.
Well, and actually, the code enforcement officer at the time was able to do that.
Yes,
I
yes. So we'll,
assume, it's like every software program, there's gotta be a way to export the data that's connected to any.
or something even easier than exporting data in terms of providing just a browser-based access to the file.
Yes,
So,
correct.
yes.
That I don't know if the access permission.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
We can talk tomorrow, Aaron. Other comments from the board? Any questions for Aaron, Carol?
Are you all set?
I am, thank you.
So on the update to the town maps, the resource protection zone is based on the 100-year floodplain. So we really need to update the zoning maps and officially adopt those at town meeting, the revised maps. They're not, the maps have a caveat that says it's really what the map zone is, but even so, I think if people were using them, they would be confused. And some of the areas have changed pretty significantly. So I think that's, the planning board has a budget, don't they, with Viewshed. So I think I think you guys can go ahead and start that process.
With who do?
With our GIS consultant.
Right, yeah, so I can work through the town office to get that information and contact them directly and get going.
You could, as long as Beak is in the loop, there's a budget for her time, $3,000 a year. We haven't used it for the past couple of years, so we haven't done any updates, but what I think the process would be, Beak is not here, but would be that you could contact her, tell her you would like the new floodplain maps to, the zoning maps to be updated with the new floodplain maps. She can put the new floodplain maps on the town GIS, and then we would then have to adopt a new zoning map at town meeting.
When you say contact her, you mean Judy?
Judy, yeah, so contact Viewshed, which is the same person who used to be called Spatial Alternatives, but in other words, you guys have a budget, you have the, that's your role. I would just keep Beak in the loop, and to try to get it done by town meeting, I would recommend you do that.
Oh, yeah, that's what my
The other
action
thing
was.
that has sort of been ongoing, and probably as a newer board member, you guys maybe haven't been in the loop, the goal was to update the parcel maps kind of, regularly until they're all updated. And that's one of the reasons we had this budget, and we were doing it for a while, but I think with, change in board step forward, it maybe hasn't been carried forward. So the other thing that she was doing was updating the parcel maps. Because you make a comment in here about, how they're not very accurate, and she has to manually go in and correct them. It's kind of tedious. So we were sort of having her do sections at a time. Like if she had an application in a certain area, then she would go in and correct the parcels in that area. We haven't, one question I had was, have we had any, what do we have for planning board applications this year?
No, I think there's the potential for a bunch coming in particular for shoreline issues down the pike.
But in 2024, did you have any applications?
Yeah, a few.
Several pre-application meetings. I don't believe there is files.
We had, yeah, I mean, there was for some uses, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, I think you guys can go ahead and start that process, and if we start it soon, we should be able to get it done by town meeting, and that's what I would tell her, is the goal is to get the zoning map updated in time. And then there is, so we took the budget that used to be in planning board for legal and put it into the general legal budget. But the understanding is if you need legal assistance, we have some money we have funds available for that. But it would be helpful for you to, maybe estimate for our fiscal year 26 budget, what your budget needs to be. You have a budget right now, I don't remember how much it is.
It's not much.
Right, so
Yeah,
if you think you need
7,000.
more, that's part of the reason to get these reports, was to get an idea of what you might need for money.
So,
Yeah, okay, we'll give that. I mean, for the most part, we're pretty cost effective and we do a lot of the work ourselves, that otherwise might go to an attorney to draft.
Yeah, I don't,
But we have to get legal review of anything we do, and so hopefully it won't be too bad.
right, so to be clear, that money that's in your budget is aimed at consulting kind of things and was primarily focused on that work with Judy Colby George's organization to get those things updated. If you have legal work to be done, there's money in the general legal budget to get that done.
and the budget used to be, I don't know, several $1,000s.
It was $5,000.
5,000.
You thought 7, something like that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. And her work is amazingly
Inexpensive.
practically priced, yes.
Yeah, she's very reasonable.
And can I get her name and contact information from somebody?
Yeah, I could,
That'd be-
send.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And
then
she asked
lastly-
me about it because she was wondering why we haven't,
Right.
done
Right.
anything with her for 2 years.
That,
Well, lastly, if there's financial resources you need to work on the comprehensive plan, if you're talking about bringing in outside resources to work on that, the sooner you could get us some kind of an idea of what that budget number might be, the sooner we can bake it into the budget,
okay.
or try to, I should say.
And so along those lines, the town did get a housing opportunity grant. We were awarded a grant. Eliza Jane knows this. We applied this time last year. We got an award in the fall. Mika checked with them in December. They said the contract was forthcoming and we haven't seen it. And I think it's because the state is sort of regenerating the state planning office or something in similar form called the, Office of Community Assistance. And so that's currently going through, that was created last year. This year they're populating by taking people from different agencies and putting them in that office. So all of the code enforcement, coastal program related to municipalities, all of the grant programs, even GoPIP, are gonna come through this one agency. And so they have a fairly big staff and a pretty big budget. They also have requirements, so the whole comp plan thing is being kind of re-established. And they have right in the statute that your eligibility will be affected if you don't have a, whatever the word is, certified comp plan, which we don't right now. So eligibility for grant funds will be impacted, and so I can send you guys the legislation if you're not familiar with it, but it's in this year's budget process. So it's coming. So I do think there is more urgency than there was to get an updated comp plan. We got this $50,000 grant, a big part of that was to update the comp plan. So I don't know what the story is on that. It might be that once they establish this office, maybe then they're gonna release the funding. I tried to get an update before tonight, but it's local, it's state money, it's not federal, so I don't know what the story is. But, so there may be 50 grand out there to hire outside services to, that's what we thought about 3 months ago, but anyway. Then tonight we have, the climate action team applied for a grant to specifically look at coastal resiliency issues relative to shoreline zone and to hire some outside expertise to look at our ordinances and to make some suggestions. So that will be in concert with the planning board. I talked to that program today. The money is there, hasn't been held up. So we're going to be looking at that tonight. So So that's a small piece of sort of trying to incorporate some climate resiliency into particularly the coastal ordinances. And there are some model ordinances out there that we could consider, or we can tweak them for ourselves. So that's kind of something that you'll be hearing about, but that's going to be happening, not for this town meeting, but going forward. So, anyway. But this new Office of Community Assistance should be quite helpful in preparing the comp plan and should help to reduce the amount of local resources we need to use.
Right.
So. And I really appreciate you providing copies of the, you know, what you're doing now on the ordinances, so that's helpful to have. I haven't looked through them in great detail, but anyway, I think, I don't know how it is, it sounds like operating with 2 men down is kind of probably not the best, right? Because we have to have everybody there as a quorum, so, you know, maybe we can get some more people onto the planning board.
Other comments, Aaron?
Only thing I was gonna mention, which I didn't address, was, and I don't think it's a big deal, but to lock in regular meetings with the CEO twice a year seems like a good place to start. It could be quarterly, or it could be whatever, if other people have other frequency, and frequencies in mind, that's fine, but we're thinking twice a year. We met with the CEO this fall. It was very helpful to go through the issues and try and identify the specific pieces we could attack in a sensible way to try and alleviate issues that people have. But having that regularly probably would help moving forward, so we can talk about the ordinance changes we're proposing and other things. So I just want to make sure we're not asking too much of the CEO. And
No, the intent when the CEO was hired, I believe we reworked the job description at that time as well. The intent was for that position to be available to the planning board and the Board of Appeals, basically on demand. So when you have a specific need, feel free to ask him to come to a meeting. I would copy Vika on the request when you do that. And to have just a general get-together twice a year with no specific agenda item in mind would be perfectly appropriate.
okay,
Based on the work that was done when he was hired, when that position was set up the way it's set up now.
thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. And Eliza, you have to.
Carol, I wanted to follow up. Our comprehensive plan is not certified. Does that happen through the Office of Community Assistance?
It will now. It was certified by the state planning office at the time. Our 10-year time frame, ours lapsed in 2023. And this new office is called the Office of Community Assistance. That will be one of their functions. And I think we can expedite sort of a revised comp plan. It doesn't have to be as arduous as the last time. But it does have to be a community-driven process with stakeholder input and that kind of thing.
Do you know the scoop on this?
The Office of Community, yeah, as I know, I think they still only have a head, and they're waiting to incorporate everybody.
That's what's in the budget bill right now. So that's happening, once this budget is passed.
Right.
Those people, all those positions are getting moved into the Office of Community Assistance.
That's when the Hillary go at the state, in connection with some other things that we've got to deal with. But it sounds like that's all just sort of on hold while they get the
No,
budget.
I mean, they've approved that part of the budget so far, just the whole budget has to get approved.
Right.
Yeah.
Other comments from the board? Questions? Comments? Paul?
I want to thank Eric for his efforts as chair and reiterate that yes, it's an extreme challenge to operate with only 3 members on the board. And I don't know if we could receive an application in every instance, given conflicts of interest and other things. But I wanted to speak briefly more as a private citizen with respect to the data in the software program for the code enforcement officer. This is public information. This should not go on for a year, okay? I've heard anecdotally that the growth ordinances on this island have already been exhausted for the year 2025. It's the month of February. There should be a waiting list already established. That waiting list has to be public information, easily accessible, okay? Not through one person who may know how to run the software, who may have access. This all has to be out there. This town has been sued recently. The legal impact of that, every one of you know. It's a simple fix. Make it 100% transparent, make a phone call, do it immediately, please.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. Other comments? All right, again, thank you to the planning board for working shorthanded, for putting together an excellent recap and a wonderful list of demands. So we'll consider it as such. All right, moving on. After the planning board was the ordinance drafts that they put in place, both of which are excellent. And then the modification to the shoreline climate action team. So everybody's had a chance to read this report. Questions, comments from the board? Hello?
I don't know, it's coming out as fast and furious. The impact of, we don't need to answer that.
Correct.
But the impact that all of this has, and boy, are we grateful for all of the work that has been done. I wonder if there's a lot, this is where we need the assistance of our additional people like the fellows to connect all of this information and integrate it into public knowledge. Because I don't think there's enough of this is public awareness and knowledge of what's going on. And I can see the community needs to know. So thank you. I think I have another question, but I'll raise my hand.
Other comments from the board? Carol?
Well, just to respond to that comment, as part of the objective would be then to incorporate some of this work into the comp plan.
Right.
So I think it's all there in various pieces, but it could be integrated into the comp plan.
And is that something that we can reasonably expect a fellow to be able to do? Or is it going to take more?
Aldrich thinks so.
Yeah, I think the fellow we have right now through Chebeague has been interested in pursuing that. And it's possibility for get on. And at least get the pieces together on spreadsheet basically.
Yeah.
And start that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, to that end, we have to be very mindful that we utilize Ellie within the confines and context of the position description through AmeriCorps. We have to be very true to that, to honor GPCOG's commitment to us, but also to honor Ellie's position. And she could certainly put a lot of information together and bring it back to the appropriate authorities for their review, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going really well. How long has the climate action team been in operation?
3 years? 3 years. I think it was 2020.
2022.
2022.
So
Well,
almost,
really 2023.
yeah,
It started in 2022.
So
in a couple of years, an amazing body of work.
Yeah, they've done a lot.
Yeah.
I have been really impressed.
Yep, so thank you. Comments?
I think one benefit that we had in the past year and this coming year is having a fellow.
Yeah.
So I think adding capacity, everybody's full-time working.
Yes.
And so it's adding capacity to all these different projects is definitely a high topic, high priority. So this year we have Ellie with Chebeague, and next year maybe the Institute Fellow for a couple hours here and there. Yeah, that's probably the highest priority.
Yeah.
And I think if the board isn't aware, the fellow cost the fellow to the town is $5,000 for a full year of 40-hour weeks.
Yep.
Through Chebeague.
Yep.
Wow.
Would this be an appropriate time for we talk about the meeting with?
Probably wait till, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Alden. Moving on from Climate Action Team to the Board of Appeals. Nice report from the Chair of the Board of Appeals. Any questions, comments from the board? Eliza?
Yes. I wanted to know how long, so these are questions that can't be answered since there's no one representing that organization right now.
Well,
So,
I guess if we have questions, we could record them and get
Correct.
them to them.
Yes.
okay. So how long have the openings been there, and what are some of the barriers we could look at, and looking at, just wanted to know how long the members have been serving on that. I was able to access the number of cases a year, and, but I just had a few of those questions.
In general, just from observation, the three members of that board have been there for a long time.
A lot of experience, yeah.
And the benefit of that is a lot of experience. The downside of that is that they've done a ton of work and it's got to be tiring. Preparing for those meetings and then enduring those meetings is quite difficult. The openings have been there for at least a year. Yeah, I'd say at least a year. Was there another question? I remember.
No, but I guess one of the things that I think about, we did a little flyer that went out to the community, again, making a plea for
Volunteers.
membership, but how do we make it more attractive for community members to become involved? And I think that that's important. People know that these openings are there, they see the amount of work that's done. People appreciate it, but they're like, it's feels burdensome to members of the community, so how can we work to make it more realistic and helpful for community members to be involved?
Yeah. I think one thing that works is personal appeals.
Right.
I think putting text messages up and postings and boards,
Never works.
personal appeals from the boards involved, personal appeals from select board members, personal appeals from members of the public at large. If you see a person that looks like a good fit for one of the boards, don't hesitate to draft shamelessly.
On it.
Yeah.
And he's moving it down.
Flip the boats.
Questions from the public about the report from the Board of Appeals? Comments? Okay, moving on. We've finished that portion of the agenda. We're a little behind schedule, but that's fine. And the next item on the agenda is 25-012, but we've got some lengthy discussion items here.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask if we could move up, would the board be okay with moving up item 25-017?
Yeah.
For the benefit of the folks who want to catch the 8 o'clock vote. Is that okay? Everybody?
Okay.
Okay. So item 25-017, to discuss the town writing a letter of support for a dune restoration grant application to the state for projects at the Hook that were outlined in the packet and in an email that came from Ted Ballard to the board, or from Ted to Vika, and then on to the, I think everybody has seen that design and also the draft letter of recommendation. Any comments, questions from the board? And we can certainly tap into Penny and Ted, who are here to represent that project. So from the board, any questions, comments?
If I may, I have copies of the graphics for the board members if they would like them.
We've all seen them, yeah. I think, did everybody get a chance to read those? To see the plans?
Yeah, didn't it come with the?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're talking about the things that you sent, right, Ted? Yeah. Richard?
Oh, just a comment that I'm impressed that something was figured out about this problem area. And it's complex, we've lived with it for quite a few years. I myself have looked at it and scratched my head, what's supposed to happen? And I'm impressed that the two groups were able to come up with something that's agreeable. It's a private, public ownership, and has its own complexities about it for access. I don't know if ownership is the
Correct.
right word.
Private ownership,
We
public?
don't,
Yes.
but it's an agreement between the two. So we have double responsibilities to make sure this thing works. It's just a matter of, what I would see is the money. We'll talk about that at some point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other comments? Eliza?
Who paid, when the bulkheads were put in, who paid for that?
FEMA paid for the work that was done in 2007.
That's the pressure treated
Correct.
one.
The 1905 by my great grandfather.
Yeah, right, something in the valley.
Yeah.
And there are other structural remnants down there that are not as evident that run perpendicular to the seawall. Ted, do you know if those were put in at that same 1900s era?
Yes, I think that was part of the.
Part of that structure?
The beach line management.
Yeah.
There, as I believe, had not been anything or prior to that.
Was there any government involvement in that, you know?
To my knowledge, no.
Yeah.
I have no record of any.
I doubt it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, other questions, comments from the board? Carol?
I'm I'm glad to see that the hook, can potentially be restored. I think it's great, especially I do think the bulkhead and the pilings are a bit of a hazard. And so I'm excited that this is, and I think we have to remind ourselves, these are applications for grants, so it's not a guarantee the project happens. We're supporting the grant applications, but I think it's great. And, I hope that the trust and Indian Island are successful.
Are these federal grants that you're applying for?
One of them is a federal grant, so that is frozen at this point, but the other two are state grants.
Okay. What's the amount of the federal grant?
We're gonna be applying for $20,000.
And the other two state grants? What are those amounts?
We have $25,000 to the main outdoor heritage fund and $50,000 to the sand dune restoration fund.
Okay. And if the federal grant remains frozen, what's the impact?
Then we have to raise the money to cover that gap. We
Big
don't
sale.
have enough funds otherwise.
Okay. It doesn't mean you could do less work, or could you do less work until those funds are either raised or become available?
Yeah, I mean, it's a phased project, so the first thing is to take the wall out. And then we need to wait a year to see how the sand's gonna redeposit and the soil's gonna settle down. And then we can do some revegetation as necessary and habitat enhancement for the plovers and shorebirds. But we'd like to move the trail this summer so that we can get people safely down to the beaches. It's just precarious along the eroded area there. So we'd like to have the wall come out this year and the trail move this year, wait until 2026 to do the revegetation and planting, depending on what it looks like after a year.
And just to reiterate, the trail is also access for emergency services in case of a rescue call. I know that we had one on the beach this summer, and the town of Chebeague, I believe, is responsible for a portion of Little Chebeague as well. There is a plan to be able to go down with a four-wheeler, which could do at times, but it becomes very problematic if is a patient and it needs to be transported on a backboard. Well, that's a safety concern.
Yeah, it's my understanding there were 3 emergency visits there this summer. So that is a factor that we're, telling our grant funders and, having access to Little Chebeague, which had 30,000 visitors in 2024. That's a lot, and that's a lot of people. And we need to make sure that there's a secure way for not only the public to get down, but the emergency services.
Was that all through the hook, the 30,000?
Yeah.
So not by boat?
But those were through the hook.
And are you guys tracking that, or how is that tracked?
Phyllis
Yeah.
shared that with me.
I think it's a combination of information. I don't know exactly how it's compiled.
Okay, I just remembered when we were talking, if if you're making comments from the public, I let this slip, but we really need to have folks walk up to the owl so that everybody who's listening via YouTube and all those other technologies will be able to hear and see what's coming from the public. My bad for forgetting that. A couple things. One, there was an email late today from Vika to the board. Did everybody get a chance to read that? Okay, okay. So that email, for the benefit of the public, I'll read it. It's only a couple paragraphs. I want to start up by apologizing for not being able to make it this evening. As most of you know, Vika just had a knee replacement. With so many things on the agenda for this evening, I wanted to put in my comments about one specific item that I've heard a few things circulate about. I hope this feedback is helpful to you in any way that it may be. And again, this is to the board, but this is for the benefit of the public. I have no objections to the town being in support of both sand dune restoration projects. She's referring to the hook item and then the educational item that's on a different agenda item later in the meeting. I do encourage the board to think about how they are spending taxpayers' funds. It would not be my recommendation to allocate any funds toward the hook project. The reason behind this is simply because of what was the last vote by taxpayers relative to this discussion. At one point, there was a reserve account supporting restoration at Indian Island. That was restoration of the access road, but the taxpayers voted to reallocate that money for other projects. At this point, I think it should be more of a town meeting discussion that would allow taxpayers to decide if they want to put any more money toward hook restoration, put any money toward hook restoration. I think the town has several town-owned right-of-ways that money has not been spent on and should be, the money that is in that capital fund should be allocated toward improvement for those public access areas. Good luck this evening, and sorry I cannot be there. So the letter of recommendation that CCLT nicely drafted for us did say something about a contribution at the second to last paragraph. That says that we offer our support and our financial, our support letter and our financial support. Also, in Vika's absence, I spoke with our town attorney. He was not in favor. He was very much in favor of. He was very clear that it was fine for us to write a letter of support, but he was very clear that not his recommendation that we spend money on this project, given the ownership of the land and given the lack of the town's involvement relative to the former road agreement. So we talked about two different funds. One was the former Hook Fund, which is now Coastal Resilience, I believe. And we also talked about the Select Board's discretionary fund. And he said it was questionable as to whether we could legally spend money on this project given private ownership. But in his opinion, it was ill-advised to proceed with spending money on that. So those are the two data points that I wanted to share. Personally, as a board member, I am excited about the concept to look at where the hook has been and all of the angst that CCLT, Indian Island Corporation, have gone through, and the citizens have gone through, watching this beautiful area get just decimated. Getting it back to a more natural state that hopefully prolongs its life in the community, given what's going on with sea level rise and storm severity, I think is a noble effort. And I would certainly support writing, the select board writing a letter of support. But I have to rely on what our town administrator is saying and what our town attorney is saying relative to funding. So that's my comment. Any suggestions for a motion from the board or further comment from the board, questions for Indian Island, please?
If no money is included in the town, how will that affect potentially your applications?
Yeah, please, thank you.
Thank you.
It definitely affects all three grant applications. So in particular, the one we're submitting tomorrow, municipal support for the project is scored and counted. And if you're not, if you do not take a role in advising in the project or supporting the project, then we lose points in the grant.
Can support be non-monetary? I mean, we definitely support the project.
Right, yes, you can be advisors, you could be part of the implementation, you could be part of project management and implementation of the, we're gonna be building the boardwalks and we're gonna be doing planting, next year. So if the town was willing to be a part of that, that would be great. And just advising how the project's going.
My sense is it's the same issue, it's town resources, so I think I think a couple alternatives here. I know it may not help for your application tomorrow, but, you could make a proposal that could be brought to town meeting, and we could entertain a financial contribution to the project. I'm pretty certain the community would support that. And that's been done on other things. So I think that's one thing to consider. Alternatively, we have a number of nonprofits that, maybe you could get one of them to, partner on a financial basis. I think our hands are pretty tied with this situation. It has to be a town meeting vote, so we can't, I don't think we have an option. But I do think you could bring something to town meeting if that was of interest. And that would be June.
June 8th, I believe, June 9th.
And you could put that,
Yeah.
you could put that in your application that, that could be considered
I
something.
would propose we could put that in our letter of support as well.
Yeah.
This board commits to putting that on the town meeting agenda.
But I don't think we can, commit to an amount. I just don't think we can do that right now.
I think even a nominal amount would help if that was something that you would consider this evening.
I don't think we can give any, my understanding is, right,
A range, not a range.
no, I think we can't
Nothing is
provide,
nothing.
it's, the issue is public funds to private entities.
Yeah.
And we've had this come up before on a number of occasions, making repairs to people's, things on their property.
While Penny's up here, other questions for CCLT from the board? Thanks, Penny.
Yeah.
Other comments from the public? We don't really have we don't have a motion on the floor yet on this topic.
Do we need a motion?
Well, if we're gonna write a letter of support, I think we need a motion to vote on that.
Okay.
We have other comments?
Correct, but I think we need to have a motion on the floor before we ask for public comments. That last was a question from the board of CCLT. So, other comments, questions, a motion? Carol?
I make a motion that we provide a letter of support to the Hook Restoration Project as drafted by CCLT. Minus with the modification that we cannot provide financial support. I guess we could, I don't know if I want to write the language in the motion or.
Do you want to make motion, do you want to include in your motion the addition to the letter of support, the concept of bringing it to town meeting, bringing a contribution to town meeting?
Yes, so I guess I would say, with the addition that the board would be willing to bring a request for funds to town meeting 2025.
Okay. Do you have that motion?
I didn't hear the end of it, I need to speak up a little bit.
So to bring
Board will be
support-
willing to bring.
a request for funding to the voters for town meeting in 2025.
Sure.
So there's a motion on the floor, Eliza.
Well, I'm not ready to second it, but may I say I would like to see wording for that, bringing the funding request before the town to seem more secure, giving the reason that due to being unable to provide funding for an improvement on private land, that it needs to go to a town meeting. I think it would be good to couch it in more information on why, which really says in a sense that our hands are a bit tied for providing that funding, but we're willing to move forward and asking for it at the town, so it really gives it a better shot for the grant.
So you're suggesting that the motion be amended to include that detail regarding the reason why we can't offer funding, but what we can offer is bringing it to town meeting?
Yes, thank you, Bob.
So would something like, given that the select board doesn't have the authority to appropriate funds for the project, we would support
For the
bringing,
project on private land.
okay, project on private land, that we we support bringing a request for funding to town meeting in June of '25.
Okay, so that's, the motion is amended.
Does that work?
That,
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Okay, a second by Richard. Discussion by the board. Eliza, you seem
can we
to have
say
something to
at the
say.
next town meeting, instead of saying June of 2025, it just sounds so far away. Does that matter?
That's fine.
So
Yeah,
amend
that's
it to
fine.
say at the next town meeting. And in that way, if we wound up with a special town meeting,
Then we could vote
we
on
could
it.
vote on it then, yes.
And can we make a statement of strong support, unanimous support, the amount of support on the select board for
I think
that?
that's covered in the wording
Or is
that's in
that
there
covered?
now. Yeah. So there's a motion on the floor, there's a second. Is there any more discussion from the board?
I just
Carol.
have sort of just a technical question. I noticed you sign, it's the chair that's signing this. Typically, it's Benvika. Does it make any
That
difference?
was what was drafted by CCLT. Would you prefer it be? the-
I don't care if it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah,
Some kind of technical end.
Vika could answer the question whether there are any technicalities relative to that in her absence.
I think it's fine. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
The key is that we get it off the CCLT by like 8 o'clock in the morning, so. As long as you're happy with it being the board signing, or the chair signing on behalf of the board?
Yes.
Okay. Any more discussion from the board? Discussion from the public? Beverly, you had something to say?
I'm so sorry I'm late. I thought it would be a lot later.
So you're right.
Years ago, we appropriated,
Perfect, thank you.
years ago, we appropriated $60,000, and we got a donation of another $60,000. And you probably already went through all this.
No,
And the discussion of that, and the town voted to put in 60,000. And at that time, it was for private, but town had a stand in that land as well, didn't it? Some of it,
Correct.
but some of it was private.
The town, if you don't mind, had an agreement relative to the road.
And that's the question, is it all done, the agreement gone now? It's totally gone. Okay, but we did have an agreement for the road, but we also were gonna be putting money towards stuff that was private land that was next to the road and stuff. I'm just getting this out, and I know that we voted not to put the wall back in and do all that. And probably it's a good thing because of what's happened, so I'm over it. But that piece of property goes to Little Chebeague, which is town-owned. It goes to the clammers, the fishermen, and the public really utilizes that property tremendously. You've probably already gone through all this. I think it's vitally important for us to make a commitment to do some monetary as well, it will help get this funding. And I thought you could do a contingency, selectmen contingency fund, you could use that as well, I think. for
Thanks,
something
Beverly.
like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Probably it's already been said.
No, thank you very much.
Fresh idea.
You covered some new territory. Other comments? Ted?
I just wanted to remind us all, and we've talked about this before, that I hear concerns being raised about private ownership. But I also want to remind us that in 1999, everybody in this room got deeded right of access to the beach over this route. All of you, the people that are on the Zoom. So that I hope we don't misinterpret how this fits into the community. And I hope that the community thinks it's valuable to be able to get there. I came to ask for your support, and I came from New Hampshire to ask for your support, because I believe it's really important for the grant makers to see your support. So I hope that you will kind of keep your eye on how can you help us get there, if it's something you think is important.
Thanks, Ted. Other comments from the public? Okay, any closing comments from the board before we vote? Eliza?
I wonder when you spoke with the lawyer about the technicality of doing this on privately owned land, if that person understands the importance of public access, but also emergency access to these areas and how that will be impacted. And really the importance of that. So I see it not just as an access for the public, but if we have that many people traveling down there and knowing the situations we had with rescues, how vital that is to be able to get down there.
Yeah. So in that conversation, emergency access was not discussed. Everything else that's been discussed tonight was discussed in detail. Cheryl?
Just one final comment. I think the community will thoroughly support this project. I think this is really a process issue. It's not a lack of support, it's a timing and process issue. My sense is you'll see more than $5,000 from the town of Chebeague community at town meeting. So, I mean, I think we have to follow the correct process. It's not up to us as the board to do that. And that's how we have done it in the past. That's why the nonprofit allocations come up at town meeting.
David?
I agree, and in the drafting of the letter, whoever's going to draft the letter, I think it needs to be clearly pointed out exactly what Carol said, that we believe that there is support in the community for this project, which will be reflected in a town-wide vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and make it clear that this is not a rejection at this point. This is merely a formality, if you will, to take this to the next step.
Would it be okay, I mean, I mentioned that money before, but if we're gonna bring it to the town, how much are we gonna ask citizens of Chebeague to pay? Could we propose that we believe they deserve getting $25,000 from the town that will be reviewed for, how are we gonna come up with a figure to tell the town at the town meeting, how much do we wanna pony up? Do we need to study this, or can we guesstimate?
I think that's part of developing the warrant for town meeting.
Okay.
But I think it's
So we can't
fair
give
to-
them a number,
We could say
a
it's
guesstimate.
suggested $5,000 or something like that.
I would lean toward Carol's language that we think it would be much more than $5,000. But that's a process issue that we have to go through down.
I mean, we can't commit an amount, and so I would steer clear of saying
Yeah.
amount. I think we could say we believe there's substantial support in the community to make a financial contribution to the project or something like that. Because I think there is.
But we can't say we would anticipate it could be more than 5. We can't make a statement, or can we?
It depends on how we draft the warrant.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can commit to that now. I mean, I'm not comfortable doing that because we can't commit the voters ahead of time. I think we can.
Not commit, but to commit to bringing it before vote.
Yeah.
Bringing the issue before the voters, I'm comfortable with as a warrant, as a suggested warrant item. It's hard that we don't have Vika here to counsel us because she knows how warrants get crafted, but it's a timely situation. We need to deal with this now in order to support the application as best we can.
But I think, I don't remember now exactly what motion says, but I think the language in the letter can have, say something like, we believe there is substantial support in the community for this project and plan to bring it to town meeting for, to ask for funding.
Okay.
That seems pretty positive.
Yes.
Seems like the best we can do
I think so.
with this situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other comments? Okay, yes, Beverly?
Just a question, is that part of the budget process when you're doing the budget?
No.
No? You don't put a number in there to bring to the town meeting?
Well, I think what we were talking about including in this letter is a warrant article that would be included in the warrant.
Yeah, but eventually you'd be putting some number in the warrant article.
So if the warrant article got voted up, and I'm not an expert in this, but I believe the way this would happen is if the warrant article got voted yes, then that amount would get added to the budget that was prepared. I don't think the motion contemplates putting this in the proposed budget for the year. Because putting it in the budget is more aimed at things that we know we have the authority as a select board to deal with.
Right. So
Which is why this is a specific question put in front of town meeting. Does that sound right?
Yeah. And so, for example, with the nonprofits, they come to us with a request. We work through that, but then we vote on that, the town meeting votes on that, not the select board.
Right, right. Okay, there's a motion on the floor, it's been seconded, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Sorry we couldn't do more. Okay. All right, moving on. Going back to agenda item 25-012. To review and authorize the town administrator to sign the contract for services with FB Environmental for meeting facilitation. In the packet, apologies for those of you who just showed up for that agenda item at the request of TCLT and the Hook, we moved it up, sorry. Aldrich has left.
He just left.
Yeah. Carol, do you have anything you want to say
Yeah,
about
so
this?
this is a grant the Climate Action Team went after with the Casco Bay Estuary, Casco Bay Estuary Project. We were given some funds to basically, the goal here, and it's not really meeting facilitation, but that's okay. If you read through the thing, it's really to look at what we were talking about, how to, looking through the town's existing ordinances, looking at model ordinances and, with some professional expertise, having them make some suggestions on changes we could make to our ordinances to improve coastal resilience. So, as we sit here, nothing has changed in our ordinances. People can still build in places that are probably ill-advised. And so this is part of a community process to decide, whether we want to change those ordinances. And the state and some of the planning commissions have come up with some model ordinances that other towns have adopted. So we don't have to create them out of thin air. But it's something that we should consider. And for example, some towns are requiring septic systems to be further back from the shore, structures to be further back from the shore in areas that show that they would be flooded. So I think it's not a conversation for tonight, but that's what this is for. So in our new reality here, this is a state funded grant, but the money was bipartisan infrastructure money. So I did check with the grantor, and the way this project is set up, we get an allocation initially of half the grant, and then we get one at the end. So I want to know that before I approve spending on any grant going forward, because I think this is going to be challenging. So what I would recommend is we authorize this contract, and then once the first half of the grant is expended, we kind of revisit the situation, and we might have to so I think part of this contract will be an understanding between us and the consultant that after we get to the end of our first allocation, we'll want to stop and decide whether we want to continue. So,
Can you capture that in the form of a motion to further discussion?
I guess I would say I'd make a motion that we approve the contract for services for resilience planning services from FB Environmental.
slow, I can't get
Oh, sorry. I make a motion that we approve.
Carol, to interrupt, we're on the one about, there's two agenda items.
Yeah.
One is relative to
Oh,
resilience
they did
planning,
two
one is for
different
meeting
contracts?
facilitation,
Yeah.
two different contracts.
I only have one.
I got it.
That explains why.
Yeah, they're both in the packet.
I think I ran out of paper in the
Here's the other
printer.
Okay.
All right, so we're on the meeting facilitation.
Correct.
So
Yes.
that one, I make a motion that we approve the contract, because that fits into the budget, for meeting facilitation with FB Environmental Services.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Eliza, second by Eliza. And now discussion, and remember there are two successive agenda items here. So there's a motion and it's been seconded on the first one, which is the smaller contract for meeting facilitation. Any further conversation from the board? Any comments from the public on this agenda item? Seeing none, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor? Okay. That was unanimous. And now we'll move on to item 25-013, to review and authorize the town administrator to sign the contract for services with FB Environmental for resilience planning services.
So I'd like to say, I'm not going to repeat what I just said, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract for services for resilience planning services for FB Environmental, but that we communicate to the consultant that we would like to review the project status once we have expended all of our initial funds.
all of our,
Initial funds.
funds.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor, David.
I just have a question.
Can you wait till we get, if there's a second?
It's a
Oh,
question.
okay, go ahead.
Are the same caveats in place in terms of funding, and in terms of
Well, the
what's
first,
in the future?
yeah. I think I understand, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a second? Second by Eliza. Discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? Eliza?
I do. So portals for funding reimbursement are closing quickly with no notice.
Correct.
So I wonder how quickly we can get started on this.
So this is why I wanted to get this on the agenda. This money is actually at USM. This is the weirdest contract ever. We have a PO from USM. The money is there. She is great. She already actually is sending us a check. I'm like, well, we haven't even approved it yet, but she's with us, get it out the door, get it in your account. I'm just saying there is a risk. We're approving essentially $12,000 worth of services. We know we have $6,000 in the bank from this, or will shortly. I think it's responsible of us, once the consultant gets to that point, we kind of say, well, okay, let's see what the landscape looks like funding-wise and check in with the grantor and say, what do you think? Or the town decides we'll take the risk.
Right. So a little bit more clarity on that, only because I've been involved in some other funding items recently. If the money has if a program is federal money but going through the state or some other agency, once the money has been given to that agency, so far there have been no clawback attempts. We've dodged those so far. See what I did there? So for Maine Housing, for example, that money that we just received for the final payment on the boxes was already in Maine Housing's accounts, therefore we were good. Same thing as Carol's referring to here, the money that's already at USM is not going to get clawed back, we hope. It's further replenishments to that pool that we would want to check in on.
Okay.
And that's covered in our motion, so.
And just while we're on the topic, we are working, once Beak is back, we've been working to try to identify all the different grant sources. Somebody, either Beak or Andrew, will check in with all the grantors to kind of find out what the status is. Because I think we need to know that. We have about, I don't know, 10 grants going on right now, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments from the board, questions on the motion? Motion on the floor, any comments from the public, questions on the motion? Okay, motion on the floor, it's been seconded, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. And item 25-014, to review and authorize the town administrator to sign the contract with GEI Consultants and take any necessary action. I believe the contract was in the packet, am I right?
No,
The contract was not in the packet, okay.
no, and I guess it didn't get posted.
Oh.
So technically, I don't think we should approve it because it's not posted, right?
No,
Okay.
So that's
we
maybe,
don't have anything.
no, we did get it
When?
yesterday.
Yeah,
I didn't get anything.
the contract with pricing came in
did.
yesterday. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
dang it, I never got anything.
No, we should have, it's on us,
One
we
of us
should
should
have
have.
asked you to post it. I sort of assumed somebody was doing that, but it's okay. I think we can, I don't know if we want to wait till our next meeting or whether, I mean, do we have a budget meeting between now and the next meeting?
We have a budget meeting next Wednesday.
So I would say we try to at least approve that contract.
Yep.
Have
Yep.
you guys seen that? Did you get it? No, okay. So they haven't even, it's okay.
So for clarity, this is the proposal from GEI that would move us forward. The end goal, the end result would be a 30% design for work at the Stone Pier. There have been several drafts back and forth. We've given them a very clear set of criteria that were approved by the board. And that contract, we had hoped would come back by last Friday so that it could get into the packet. It did not come back by last Friday. It came in yesterday. And then in Vika's absence, board chair neglected to forward a copy of that on to the town office to try to get it into, at least posted on the packet so that we could vote on it tonight.
Not your fault.
Definitely not your fault. So we will bring that up as a business item. So we'll have to have the budget meeting, which is a workshop next week. We'll have to have a small business meeting posted as well. And the only agenda item would be to vote on this contract. So the same agenda item. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
But in the meantime, if I can add,
Yes.
you guys should read it, and if you have any questions, we should get those answered before we try to, we don't, I mean, the goal would be to approve the contract, so if there are questions, we can try to
Yeah.
get them answered.
So you can reach out to either Carol or Bob, but please only 2 board members per email. That whole thing.
Okay. But
Okay.
this is a big contract, it's a significant amount of money, so it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
There is grant money with it as well. We have grant money
We
that,
already have.
that grant money exists in the state, I believe, yes. And,
It is bipartisan infrastructure money.
Yeah. And it doesn't have any evil words in it. Okay, resiliency. Moving on, item 25-015, to review the draft MOU between the town of Chebeague and the town of Yarmouth. The purpose of this MOU is simply to give Chebeague the lead role in proposing and then pursuing engineering and design work relative to the structure that is the pier at Cousins. As some of you know, there is a fund in place that we contribute to every year. The fund is funded 80% by Chebeague, 20% by Yarmouth. And any further expenditures that are necessary for repairs and or capital improvements on that wharf are 80% to Chebeague's funding sources and 20% to Yarmouth's, with the exceptions of the 2 floats. The Yarmouth float is 100% Yarmouth and the dolphins associated with it. I'm not sure there are dolphins on that side. Yeah, and on the Chebeague side, the float and the dolphins are 100% Chebeague responsibilities. So there was some engineering work done before the big storms last January, and it did not include sea level rise. And what led to this proposal was Chebeague's desire to take more of a leadership role on that half of our connection to the mainland. All the work we're doing on the stone pier does us no good if we lose that pier. And given that it's 80% of our financial responsibility, and we're very dependent on it, if this draft MOU is approved by this board tonight, then a subset of the board would carry it forward to the joint standing committee that is comprised of Yarmouth folks and Chebeague folks. And if that committee approves it, then it would go back to Yarmouth's town council and or town manager for approval, and then we would move forward under that assumption. So that's the background for it. Comments from the board, questions?
Am I correct that we had the three options and that we heard back on?
So we put, as a board, we decided to put those three options on hold because none of them dealt with sea level rise. Those options were solely aimed at fixing a couple items so that everything lasted theoretically another 30 years, but there was no attention paid to sea level rise. Yeah. So, comments, questions, motions, Carol?
Well, and, you know, I think this sort of came up when we reviewed that, because we probably wouldn't have approached it that way, but the flip side of this is that we are now taking on the responsibility for soliciting bids, reviewing bids, and I think the way I understand it is once we make a recommendation, then it would be reviewed by the Joint Standing Committee. So, but we have primary control, but also primary responsibility. And, you know, the town of Yarmouth has an engineering department, we don't. So I think that's just something to be aware of. I still think it's the right thing, but it's just.
Good point. Yep.
And maybe we even hire an engineer for something as large as a wharf or a pier, stone pier, you know, maybe that's something we should be thinking about, you know. But anyway, and Vika did talk to the town manager, right? I mean, the town of Yarmouth has no objection to this.
The town manager didn't see any obvious problems, I would say.
Okay.
But they have not reviewed it officially because we haven't submitted it officially.
But the next step would be then to go to the Joint Standing Committee with this. So instead of just going and introducing the idea, we thought we'd go with a proposal so that it could be executed at the same time if people agree.
Give them a chance to review it before the meeting and all that, and then have a discussion.
If the town of Yarmouth has an engineer, and we're now having to hire an engineer, is it not within, if the town of Yarmouth engineer did some of this work, does that get 80% paid for by the town of Chebeague? Or why would we take on the expense of hiring an engineer to this when it's?
I guess I maybe shouldn't have sort of said it that way. The town of Yarmouth hired a firm to do the design.
The firm who did the report, okay.
Yeah, so they didn't do that design themselves.
No. And we paid 80% of that.
And I guess we would have done we would have selected a different firm and had different requirements. So we're just putting ourselves in the driver's seat. I just think we have to recognize that it adds more work on our side, and maybe one way to deal with that is to hire some expertise to, you know, supplement our gigantic staff.
Another way to think of it, Eliza, the town council and the town manager at Yarmouth decided to move forward with an engineering study of that pier. So they handed it to their engineer who went out and looked for proposals, qualifications, all that work. In our case, the select board and the town administrator would come to such a decision and would then look for a volunteer, whether it was a pair of select board members or maybe another party in the community, or to Carol's point, maybe we would hire an engineer to manage that process for us. Hire an engineer to manage the solicitation of an engineer. Engineering firm proposal. So it's just, we don't have the staff that they have, but I personally believe we have more of a need and perhaps a more singular focus on that problem.
Well, and I think we understand the needs or have access to the needs of CTC, whereas the town of Yarmouth really doesn't. know.
They don't need it.
And so, no, it's no criticism of Yarmouth, but we're the primary users for our daily transportation, where for them, it's a recreational site.
Correct. You got it. So,
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the second amendment to the interlocal agreement regarding Cousins Island dock. The proposed second.
Carol, why don't you repeat that?
I must be terrible, like I need to speak louder. I make a motion that we approve the draft second amendment to the interlocal agreement regarding Cousins Island dock.
second by David, motion by Carol. Further discussion by the board? Any discussion from the public? Comments, questions? Okay, motion on the floor, it's been seconded, all in favor? All right, thank you. Folks. Item 25-016, to discuss the town writing a letter of support for dune restoration grant application to the state for Sandy Point and take any necessary action. Carol, you want to speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the town and Richard and myself in particular have been working with the residents down on Sandy Point to deal with, post-storm damage issues in the dunes and also parking challenges. And so we've been working with them, actually, I was embarrassed to hear, for 3 years now, and working on trying to figure out the best configuration. What's happening down there is folks are driving through the dunes from the parking area, damaging the dunes, and they're also, on private property during that. So we started off originally with a plan to refurbish the parking lot, and after the storms of 2024, we decided we would actually move the parking. And that the parking is on private property right now. The town has made a commitment to provide parallel parking on the road. I don't know exactly how many spaces, but that's the game plan. In hopes of, allowing the vegetation to come back and restoring that area. So the upshot of that whole project, and also the fact that Vika was mentioning that people were driving, and I wasn't as familiar with this, vehicles, particularly four-wheelers, across the back shore part of Chandler's, same kind of problem. We originally were considering a restoration grant like what Indian Point is doing, or the Hook, but it is private property. It's a very small area to restore. So the upshot was the group that's been working together decided, well, if we apply for a grant, let's apply for an education grant. We'll use these two locations as an example. And I provided a memo in the packet sort of describing the project. So it isn't really a letter of support that we need. It's, we have a letter of support from the two property owners. So what we're really doing is just discussing the project, and that the goal would be for the town to submit the application. It's a very odd application. The sand dune restoration application is it's basically set up for a vendor to submit the application. So it would be a consultant. So you have to have a consultant. You can't submit it without it. So FB offered, since they have been working with us, they've written that portion of the project. But the scope of the project is in the memo that I put in the packet. So that's kind of the upshot there. So this is really for information, and that the town, and I don't know what the process is in Vika's absence. Normally she signs these, so would it be you, or should I have her sign it, or?
So the document that would be signed is not a letter of support, it's the actual application for a grant.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that that's what this said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be best if Vika signed it.
Yeah.
And is there a timeliness issue? Can we wait 3 or 4 days?
Yeah.
Okay,
We're gonna have it done by the end of the week. It needs to go in Monday, but I think we can, I honestly can take,
I was gonna say, it would be, unless you guys see a reason not to, I would propose that by later on in the week or weekend, stopping by and asking Vika to sign it.
yeah, yeah. She knows
Does that
about this, and
sound-
she's been,
Okay.
she's been on in the meetings.
Yeah.
And the property owners are very, they are working on the grant and, you know, editing it, so they're very invested in it, so.
So I would make a motion that we authorize the town administrator to sign the application for the grant as described in the packet item relative to education on dunes restoration and preservation.
Second?
Second by David, motion by Bob. Discussion from the board. Comments from the public? Seeing none, there's a motion on the floor, it's been seconded, all in favor? Unanimous? All right. Other business. Eliza, have you any other business?
I do. I was, at the request of GP Cog, there were 5 people invited to Senator Collins' office to meet with
How's it, friend?
Halsey Frank to discuss the value and the importance of these grants having to do with what were earmarked, was it an earmark or with the Department of Agriculture for the Stone Pier, the 1.19 million, plus a whole bevy of others here in the state of Maine.
Actually, I want to interrupt. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss with Collins' office the importance of the funding that supports our GP Cog fellow.
GP Cog, right.
Yeah,
So
right,
each
right.
of us had different pieces of it. My piece was talking about the fellows program and just how valuable that is. And also, I discussed the grant
Right.
as well. And
The CDS, the
CDS,
earmark,
thank
yeah.
you. Earmark. I had it all written. I had my little speech all Anyway, it's all of our politicians are in a very difficult place right now. I found that Halsey was very interested in what we had to say. Can't comment on anything, but I was really pleased when I talked about it, our grant for the Stone Pier, that he did turn on his computer and really try to give a better idea of where that is. I didn't find anything very encouraging, so I wanted to share that with you. In part because he can't be encouraging and has to remain neutral, but it's clear that it weighs very heavily on Senator Collins' office, the impact of these, and I know that we've heard that in her public statements as well. I was in communication through email with Christine Egan to inquire about, does she have any information on the funding continuing for the fellows? I think that that's a concern that we need to be prepared for. The value of what our fellows can do is enormous for us right now. We're counting on them so much, and counting on them for developing our capacity. So I think we just need to be aware of what can happen, because things can be terminated with no notice. So,
And what is the funding that we're concerned about?
both, really.
Well,
Well, I mean, the fellows, what is it
it's the funding for the GP Cog Fellows, the AmeriCorps program
the
Right,
whole
that
program?
Ellie
The
is
whole
funded by,
right.
other than our contribution, which is minimal in the
Right.
grander scheme of things. So that program is at risk.
Oh, the whole
The
program?
entire program is at risk because of its title, including some key buzzwords.
Oh, the title of GP Cog specifically, or?
The title of that AmeriCorps program.
Yeah,
That particular AmeriCorps program,
Okay, I
of which
gotcha.
Ellie is a part.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
I
So
got it.
Because
GP Cog received notice that that particular program was under threat, and therefore they marshaled a meeting of select board folks.
Gotcha.
And in that meeting, Eliza and Christina brought up the concept of where are things like that earmark for our Stone Pier project? And Halsey was as frustrated and non-committal as he and they have been in prior conversations that were prior related to the lack of congressional forward movement on the budget. Now the concern is magnified because we still have that lack of forward motion on the budget, plus we have Doge wandering around with access. So it behooves us to come up with a strategy like everybody else across the country is trying to come up with strategies to preserve their potential sources of funding. I would suggest we reach out to people like Nick, people who know legislative strategy, who might have, Carol, you know more people at the Island Institute who might be able to help with these kind of conversations, but I think we need to marshal our resources. In particular, once we sign the contract with GEI, then we can begin talking to the DOT and then going back to Congress and saying, hey, this money that we're going to have in the 2024 budget, can we get it put into the 2025 budget? And how does that happen? That kind of thing.
So what happens for the earmark you're talking about? So it could, it doesn't carry forward, it just gets replaced?
I don't think they automatically carry forward. I think
It's
it
an
has to be
annual?
reinserted, and the language changes slightly every year. The application process changes slightly every year. So you can't just resubmit the same application. Whether they come up in their sausage-making, meat-grinding conversations of how to move forward with the budget, maybe somebody says, hey, let's just carry all this stuff forward instead of starting over. Who knows? But we need to know. We need to know how that's working.
And if that were to happen, do we have to remain at the same amount, or could we be asking for more money?
I don't know if anybody in this country has the answer to that question. I would certainly always ask for an amount that's appropriate the more we learn about what our costs are going to be.
Because we'll find that out.
Right, and remember that when we first asked for these funds, we were shooting in the dark, but trying to get on the list. And we're getting closer to knowing more, so.
1 year too late, maybe, huh? I don't know.
1 year too early, 1 year too late.
But it's also whether the earmarks will even survive
As a funding mechanism, yeah. I can't imagine in the era of
I don't know, it sort of sounds like that.
transactional politics, the earmarks would go away, but who knows? David?
Just wanted to say a little bit of good news here.
Yes.
No, I checked in with Connect Maine, Andrew Butcher, to see what, the whole project is done, but we still have 5%, I think, that's outstanding, or 1% or something like that, which is, it's a small amount, but it might be something we're on the hook for.
Right.
And I got a email back saying, I do not believe the remaining 1% of the Chebeague project is at risk. So I think we're gonna be all right there, but no guarantees.
Yeah, when it hits the checking account, we'll know. But it's probably in one of those buckets where it's moved from the federal bucket to the state bucket.
And there are a couple of buckets involved.
Yeah.
One's the town.
Yeah. Okay, other,
So when the grant was written for the fellows, it used keywords that were important for the success of that grant, which are now keywords for having it cut. And so that was one of the discussions, those words were in there to get the grant. But here's what is really being done.
Carol?
So is the goal of GPCOG to sort of activate the communities to lobby to keep these positions, or what, is there an action item at this point?
I don't think there's much that can be done. I will say that the funding for the Stone Pier is under the word agriculture, which might, that's getting cut as well. I don't know if some of that will be reinstated. I just think it's a very I left there feeling how, just the impact of how uncertain things are.
If you had to have one congressional representative to be dependent on, Collins would be toward the top of that list at this point. And I have spoken to Christina on other topics yesterday, and she said they're trying to formulate a strategy to answer Carol's question. They're trying to formulate what their strategy is to protect this and other related programs, traffic safety programs, all that kind of stuff. I mean, they're a nonprofit dependent on such funding. Yeah. Okay, so other business items? Carol?
So, another grant. So the Island Institute is applying for a grant for the collective group of Casco Bay Islands. If anybody attended the Bluff thing last year, it's that group. And we got a grant for the group in '24. And I did not want to be in that position again, trying to be the grantor for all these towns. So basically, the Island Institute has agreed to be the fiscal agent, but also actually implement the grant. And so they've asked us for a letter of support. Abby sent it to us the other day. I neglected to get it in the packet, but it is up on the OneDrive. But I'm just looking for your approval to sign the letter of support. This is a collaboration of the Casco Bay Islands, and it's sort of a continuation, but I will say this group is sort of starting to develop some structure and function, and I think it's a good thing. And I think having it under the umbrella of some management by, you know, the Island Institute rather than us doing it ourselves will be great. But they're doing a lot of good work, I mean.
This is going to continue to be focused on coastal bluff issues?
No, we've expanded it to coastal erosion generally because a lot of communities, especially us, have other issues. The other thing is that the Island Institute, it's last we know, has something, a shore steward position. So the DEP, and I'm not sure where the money's coming, so this could change, but there are a couple of positions in the state, and these folks are, what I like about this grant is they will be available to come out into communities, meet with property owners, help them figure out, you know, strategies, what the options are. So they're trained in this particular, you know, nature-based solutions versus hardscaping and vegetation management, all these things. And so that's what I think I said to them. I think that would be particularly beneficial to Chebeague.
Yep.
So the grant in its draft form is up on the OneDrive and the draft letter of support. And so I would say too, so is the Sand Dune Coastal Sand Dune grant is also up there. So you can look at them if you want. I didn't want to email all this jazz around.
Right.
So it's up.
Have you sent a link out to everybody?
I did send it, that's right, I forgot. I sent the link because my husband's is setting up those files and I had trouble finding it. So it's very organized, but it's under Chebeague data or some town office data, then it's under projects, then it's under grants. Yeah. But I sent you the link.
Yeah. One strategy to that end, once you find the file, if you add it to your favorites, it becomes easier to find. You right click and there's a little three dot thing and favorites, and then for those 8 or 10 documents that you know you're gonna go through all the time.
Yeah, and in this grants file, we have separated grant applications from grant awards because I think there's a value in saving some of these applications. Because I've had to rewrite a million times. Chebeague Island is a small island community with 400 residents, and it's like, wow, why am I doing this every time? So there are grants that even were not successful that are in there that could be good resources for people. Then the grants that have actually been awarded and are active are in a separate folder. And there's a lot. It's impressive.
Okay, Eliza.
I did speak with Lisa Millette about the Island Fellows application. She said the Fellows program is 1/3 funded by federal funds, and they are looking into that the fact that it's been around for a long time. She was a little hopeful about that. We did speak on the phone because she had some questions about our application that I wasn't prepared to answer on the fly, about the fellow working with the comprehensive plan, so we'll talk in the morning. I think that it's really important for our application to be in the top 50% of these applications. It's very competitive, and my goal is how do we make sure we're in the top half in case they're filling fewer of them?
So I would encourage you to take that, the contract we just approved, even though the timing may not be, we have 2 years to do that, but that description of the language of putting resiliency into our town ordinances, that would be ideal. That's what they, you know.
Okay, which,
So the
which one,
contract,
Carol?
I'll send it to you.
Send it to me? Okay, tonight, because
Yeah,
I'm gonna talk with her tomorrow at,
it's in the packet.
okay.
The ones in the back, yeah. Okay, other business.
Oh, well, one, I don't know, no, it's communications, I guess.
Okay. All right, going once, going twice. Moving on to communications. Any communications? Speak up. She's in, yeah.
So I contacted, because Vika had mentioned, or she got an email, and I'm just trying to remember now. The work at Chandler's was supposed to start in early February, it got delayed, and the new start date is next week.
Correct.
Oh, okay, you knew that, okay, because,
That, Vika emailed that, I believe.
well, I checked because it's been, with the weather, it's been sliding.
Oh.
So he is gonna give us a date definite tomorrow, and I'll provide that to you, or to you guys. And I just want people to know, it's gonna be a little disruptive, this pile driving. It's not gonna be fun to be living there.
Yeah, yep. Okay, other communications, I did forward an email on to the board, but we got, late today, we got an email from Lynn and Chuck Mills in support of the motion that we passed earlier tonight relative to the sand dune education. And that's all I had for communication. Any others? All right. To approve the minutes from February 5, 2025.
Make a motion.
So moved.
Yeah.
Motion to approve by David, is there a second? Second by Carol. Discussion, all in favor? Okay, nice job, Chris, on the minutes. John? Okay, I just want to make sure you weren't here for something that I was supposed to remember. Okay, thank you. Items to be placed on a future agenda. I've got, working with Coastal Waters and Public Works to look back at what we learned about the floats and floats removal this year. And then I've got, after some conversations with our code officer and the planning board, we may need to have an agenda item about iWorks, either at a budget workshop or as a select board item. That'll be on the list as potential items. And then board absences, the shortages of board volunteers, that may need to become an agenda item as well, because it's not getting better at this point.
And I think we mentioned the GEI contract.
GEI contract.
Yeah, for, what's the next meeting?
Next Wednesday, there's a budget meeting, I believe, and so we'll have a very brief regular meeting just to discuss that item and vote on it. Okay?
Put that agenda together tomorrow, now.
Great, awesome. Yes, ma'am.
You know, it was still on my list of to-dos when we did the priorities for the community survey, which I think has some really positive outcomes. To offer 2 times possibly an afternoon coffee and maybe something in the evening, inviting community members to come look at it and discuss that, and that would be a really good time to be talking about people being involved.
Yep.
And I think that being able to say, this is what our community has to say, this is the feedback, gee, who wants to know about what opportunities exist? I think it should be a wonderful recruitment tool.
Do we need any board action on that, or can we just do that?
No, I just want to, I think, support, and
Yeah.
Richard and I have spoken about doing it.
Do you know how
We're
that
the
idea
new
went?
guys around the block.
I don't know if we talked about when.
We have noted, we didn't talk about any wins, but.
But again, does the board think we need board action on that, or can we just?
I think that's a good suggestion. If you guys think you're gonna follow through with that, I think that's
Yeah,
good.
I'm all for it, thank you.
There's a
Greg.
lot of questions that we can't answer.
Well, I'd be happy with
Which
him.
might be a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. me get back to you on that is always a good answer, yeah.
And if I can ask, I don't think it's out of line. Krista, you were putting together a whole list of like all the committees, who's on, you know, what their terms are,
Yeah.
kind of what's the status of that, and then what's the game plan? Do you know?
I have a list, and what Vika would like to do is we need to get everybody on a July 1, sign your oath, here's your 3-year term, for whatever committee you're on. And, because things are all over the place right now, their oaths are signed in October, December, February. And so we're coming up with a system that everybody will be on July 1 to start. And I think in April is when we're gonna send out letters, we're sending out, letters to people who are renewing, and if they're not interested, then
Right.
we know that we have to start soliciting.
Can I just give you a shout out, because the website for each of our boards and committees is seems very accurate, and that was a lot of work.
Good.
There are 65 seats that are currently filled for boards and committees
Maybe
of the
that's part of the
town.
problem.
Some of them,
Yeah.
say what?
That could be part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Too many seats.
So 65 seats that are filled, plus the empty ones, and we have people on multiple seats, but we're already talking about 10% of the population.
I guess I would like to put
Overview,
this, I would like to have, you know, put this on the agenda, at least get the copy of like, what's the status of all of these, and kind of what's the process going forward, because I think we should consider reappointments for the 2 quasi-judicial boards, which is the Planning Board and the Board of Appeals. Because I see committees, if people just want to roll over, continue, I think that's fine. But those 2 boards, I feel like we should actively review and reappoint. But that's my suggestion. I think we should bring it up on as an agenda item at a meeting. A lot of towns do that. It's different because they're making kind of, you know, big decisions. And what happens in some towns is sort of people get on those boards and never get off. And so it's an opportunity for the select board to say, your turn's up.
How do we proceed with reappointing if we don't have somebody?
Well, we would reappoint the people who have seat, you know, when their term is up, they would officially be evaluated, reappointed, and the terms are staggered, so we'd have to do it every year depending on who's eligible.
Yeah, and that has been discussed.
And
with Vika in the
And
office.
technically, if we appoint somebody to a seat, it would be for the remainder of whatever their term is. They don't start a new 3-year term, it would be, you know, 6 months if that's all that's left.
Yeah, ideally, it would be every year because people don't step off boards, but realistically, people on occasion step off boards. So that's down as a future agenda
Yeah, I
item.
think it's not urgent, but I think it'd be a good idea.
And the reappointments are discussed in executive session.
Correct.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
All right, other items to be placed on a future agenda. We've got a long list of items still in holding on the spreadsheet on the drive. All right, at this point, I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session. David?
Move to executive session under RSA 6A, approved new appointments, applications.
Is there a second? Second by Richard, all in favor? All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. And thanks to the town staff for holding down the fort.
Yeah.
Oh,
Your executive session.
Yeah.
It's like Alder, maybe.
I think you'd know.
What size is it?
Yeah, right. One size fits anybody.
Oh, and you're empowered to stay in the executive session. All right, good. Hold on a second.
So, we have 65 position people on board.
These are town board, not even,
Town boards,
not even the-
65 seats.
that's not counting.
Is it name brand fishing gear sweatshirt?
Oh, yeah.
I'll drop it upstairs.
That's quite a number.
That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
No.
problem.
Good night, Chris, thank you.
You know, who's the